Anyone
This
any
conference
questions
will
that I can
now
take?
be recorded.
Is anyone any questions that I can take before we get started? Anyone anything that I can address? Okay, so this way we are just to let's say brief things up. Just give me a second. Let this get started in a second. Just give me one quick second out here. All right, so let's see. So we have our Azure repository, and we have some branches inside this particular repository out here. And my first question, guys, is that can a developer go ahead and directly make a commit on top of this particular branch? Can I, as a developer, make a commit directly on top of this branch? Yes, no, maybe.
No.
No.
No, why no? Why is it a no? What do we have on this branch?
Policy.
It's a backup.
Policy.
Backup.
It's a policy. No, it's not a backup. It's a policy. That's what it's restricting me as a developer or me as a DevOps engineer to go ahead and directly make a commit directly on top of this particular branch. So I have a branch and I have a policy on top of this particular branch, and this policy is now sorry, this policy is now telling me that I at least need one reviewer to go ahead and approve this change out. And I am allowing myself to go ahead and let's say approve this particular change. Reason being, I'm the only let's say person in this entire organization out here as such. But if you want to change that, you can go into your Azure DevOps organization, into the users of Azure DevOps organization, and there are a couple of users out here. So if you want to add a user here, right, you can just go and add a user, give a random email ID like xyz@gmail.com or whatever it is, and then go ahead, add them to the projects. So for example, in our case, it is sample learning. When you try adding them to the project, this is what it asks you. Do you want to give them an administrator right, a reader right, or a contributor right out here as such? In my case, I already have a user telling it is rbac contributor at the rate let's say gmail.com. For this particular user, I'll just go ahead and manage this user out. As of now, this user has a permission on the 9 a.m. class project out here. What I'll do, in my case, I want access on sample learning as well. So I'll just go ahead search for that particular project called sample learning, and I'll give this particular user an access called project contributor. So he's not an administrator, neither he's a reader, but he'll still be able to approve your pull requests and so on and so forth. Reason being, this particular user is now becoming a contributor on top of your project out here. I can save this out. So as and when I have a user here, I can now go ahead update my branch policy. I can say in the branches, change the policy, and I'll remove this out, telling allow requesters to approve their own change. Meaning if you are requesting for a pull request, you cannot approve the same out here. And I can just scroll down. There is something called automatically include reviewers, meaning who's a required reviewer. I'll say add, and I'll say it is the reviewer name is called rbsc contributor at the gmail.com. This is the name of the reviewer, or this is the ID of the reviewer. I'll say he's required, and I'll say save. Now this becomes a required reviewer to go ahead and let's say approve your changes out here as such. So this is a new policy that I'm introducing. So what I'm trying to do today is that before we go ahead and understand more in detail about the build pipeline, I would just want to let's say take a pause, come back to the branching policies, and understand how can I improvise my policies in order to make my branch more secure. So the very first step that I'm doing is I am doing an let's say same let's say I'm telling that okay fine, at least one reviewer should approve this out, but I'm now removing the condition that the requester should can or the requester should or can approve their own change out here as such, which means that if you go ahead right now, create a new branch as a feature branch, I'll say feature Kiran test, something like this. from the develop branch out here, and if you create the same thing out here, and let's say I do some change, I'll say some change, commit, commit here, I'll say create a pull request into, let's say, that particular develop branch, I'll say create. Now, even if I approve this out, now do you see my approval is becoming an optional approval out here, and who's the required approver? That particular contributor that you have added as a part of the policy. So it's telling policy is coming, it's telling, you know what, contributor must approve the change. That particular contributor, or this can be your lead, a development lead or something like that, who should come and approve this particular change out here as such. Now let me go forward. Let me come here into my branches. Let me go into the policies and let me enhance the scope of my policies. When I say enhance the scope of my policy, what I'll do right now is I'll put one more policy here telling telling check for linked work item, and I'll say this is required, and I'll also put one more policy called check for comment resolution required. So now if you see, my branch policy is now telling me that I need at least what, one reviewer to approve the change, work item should be linked, comments must be resolved. What does this mean? Firstly, let's understand what are work items, and let's understand why they're really required out here, and why do you put that into your branch policy out here as such. Let's imagine that you are a developer. Let's imagine that you are a developer, and as a developer, you want to make a change onto the code that is there in this particular developmental branch. So this is the developmental branch of your repository. You want to make some change of this particular code. You want to update the code, or you want to delete some portion of the code, and so on and so forth. And all these changes needs to come via a pull request. You cannot directly go and, let's say, do the change out here directly on the branch. We will we will have to come and we will have to approach this via a pull request out here as such. But the question is that who's asking this developer to update this change? Who is telling this developer to go ahead and, let's say, do this change? Can this developer do the change on his own? Just go there and just do something random? Or my question is, who should ask this developer? Because until and unless there isn't a requirement to make a change, the developer should not make a change out here as such. So there is someone called as a scrum master that we are talking about. The scrum master is someone who divides the work or gives the work out here. How does the scrum master give the work? By using a tool called Azure boards. Something called as Azure boards out here. So if I come back, if you click here, there is a service called boards. If I go in here, if I go in here, there is something called as a board, and in here we have three different options. One is called to do, doing, done. So I, as a scrum master, I am going here and I'm saying add a new work item, and I am telling okay, fine, please update the code as per the client's requirement. Please add additional functionality, something like that, something like this. And I'll say enter. I, as a scrum master, I am going ahead and assigning this particular work item. We call this now as a work item right now, to my developer called classes@gmail.com. In your case, that developer can have an actual name. In my case, this is a fictional name out here, and I'll say save. As and when you do that, this developer is going to receive an email telling that okay, fine, a work item is assigned. Please go ahead and check that out. I, as a developer, I'll say okay, fine, this is the work item. Please update the code. This is what is the requirement. I'll say great, not a problem. Now let me go ahead, create a new branch telling feature run test hyphen the work item that is assigned to me. The work item number. Let's say in my case, the work item number is called 131. So I'm just giving you an example of a name of a branch, telling work item, and I'll say code change, something like this. I'll say from the develop branch. Now, before I create this particular branch, I have an option to go ahead and link this to my work item. Do you see it's telling please update the code here? So it's telling okay, fine, please update the code. I'll say okay, great, create this out. I'll now go here, change the code. I'll say this is CI demo adding branch policies. So I got a requirement as a developer to change the code. I'll say commit, and as soon as I do that, I'll say change the index HTML page. And before I commit, I can again go ahead and link the same work item here. And then now go ahead, create a pull request into the develop branch again. I'll say create. As and when I do that, now do you see what are the branch policies that I have? Saying work items must be linked, comments must be resolved, contributor must approve the change. Three different branch policies that are now sitting on top of, let's say, my branch, which are controlling the quality of the code. Just now telling, okay, fine, the work items has to be linked, yes. Comments must be resolved. We'll see what is comment resolution, and the work item is linked. Meaning, whenever you are going ahead and creating that particular branch, you are linking that particular work item. If you don't do that, let me see if I don't do that. For example, this is where your work item is. If I remove this, do you see what is happening right now? The branch policy is failing, and this failure will not let sorry, this failure will not let your pull request get merged. Your pull request will never merge if the policies are not satisfied. If the policies are not satisfied, the pull request will never get merged out here, which means I need the work item to be linked. So if I just scroll down, I'll just add the work item back again. And now again, the policy is back again into green here right now. What this work item gives you, or what this work item really gives a capability here is this. As a scrum master, I can just come into your work item and in order to understand what you're really doing, I can go into this work item, go to the right, scroll a little bit down. Do you see there is something called development? Meaning every time you have attached this particular work item, for example, you have created a feature branch. Then you went ahead and let's say change that particular, let's say index.html file. Now you created a pull request. Everything will be now tracked here under the development section. So now I as a scrum master, I can just come here and understand, okay, fine, what are you really doing? What is your update here? Without having to ask you, without having to personally go and ask you, I can track all your work here. This is very helpful for the administration. Meaning if my client asks me what this particular guy is doing, I'll be now in a position to understand what are you really doing out here. How are you really doing it? What are you really doing it? And so on and so forth out here as such. So that's where work items comes into picture. And in order to make this work item mandatory, I'm putting a policy on top of my branch called what? checked for or check for linked work items, which is what required out here as such. Now I have a pull request ready to be approved. So if I go into my pull requests, I have this particular pull request telling what change the index.html page out here. And good, please. Yes, yes, work items are used to track what is the developer doing. Yes, it's useful for Scrum Master or your project manager or some administrator in order to track your work out here as such. Now let's see. This pull request, even if I approve this out and try to delete this out, it will still not get merged. Reason being, I am an optional approval right now because I cannot approve my own change. Why can't I approve my own change? Why can't I approve my own change, guys? Why is this approval not being valid?
Change in policies.
Given as a
Change in
policy.
policies. Yes, given as a policy. And the policy is telling that I cannot approve my own change. That is what your policy is really telling. Where is it telling again? If you go into your policy, go into the policies out here, this is what is telling me. Allow requesters to approve their own changes is not checked. So I cannot really approve the change out here. So let me do one thing. Let me log into Azure DevOps like that particular contributor. So I that particular contributor account was already there. But when you add a new account, you'll get an email just like you did for, let's say, Azure portal. You'll get an email invitation, just have to accept it. Let me say sign in. And I'll just go ahead sign in here. Say RBAC contributor. I'll give the password here. I'll say no, not sign in. And also, if I open my Gmail, right, as that particular account, let me go ahead into this particular account here. Now, do you see? Just now I received an email telling that a new pull request is created and your approval is actually required. You are actually required. So it's telling, okay, fine, this is giving me an email directly. And if I view the pull request from here also, now as a contributor or as a lead of your project, I can come here understand what you're doing. So earlier it was this one, you added a new line. Probably I don't want a comma here. I want a full stop and there's a space. This is not allowed. I as a project or I as a project lead can go ahead and say no spaces allowed. Syntax errors. I'll say comment. So what I did is I left a comment on your pull request telling that okay fine you have to first go ahead and correct this particular change and this is the file where I'm commenting it out. As and when my project manager comments this out, if I come back into my own account as classes Azure DevOps and look into my pull request, do you see what is happening again? Comments must be resolved, meaning the project manager has put a comment here telling that this is the issue, this is what it is, please remove the space. Now I can go back into my branch, I can go back into that particular pages and this is the issue, right? I'll correct this. I'll say no spaces, full stop, something like this. I'll say okay fine, removed spaces, and then I can use again my work item, check commit, and I don't have to create a new pull request. The pull request already is there. So if I click on this particular pull request again, sorry, if I click on the particular pull request again, and if you look at the files, this is updated again. The file is automatically updated. I don't have to create a new pull request for the same. If the pull request is already there, the file just gets updated there out here as such. Now I can come here and I can say removed spaces. And say reply and resolve. Once the comment is resolved, now do you see again what happened? That's what comments must be resolved really talks about. Telling that your comments have to be resolved out here as such. And now as a project leader, I can go back, or as a lead of this particular project, I can go back into the file, and he's telling the comments as resolved. And I can look at the file again. Okay, this is good. Okay, let me refresh the screen. This is good. I refresh the screen. This is good. I'll say approve. Done. Once the project lead approves this out, or once the automatic reviewer, or once the required reviewer approves this out, then my branch is going to get merged into the develop branch of my repository out here as such. So these are the policies I'm now introducing, telling that, sorry, these are the policies that I'm now introducing, telling that I at least need one reviewer to approve this change. I need linked work items to be present. Comments must be resolved. And finally, but very importantly, something called as limit merge types. In here, there are a couple of merge types called basic, squash, rebase, and rebase with merge commit out here as such. Now, these are the types of merge. Types of merges that can happen in a Git repository. Sorry, types of merges that can happen in a Git based repository out here. What do I mean by this? What are the different types of merge, and what does each and every type of merge really mean to me? In order to explain that, let me do one thing. I won't be able to do it in the current repository because there are already a lot of merge history and all that stuff that has already happened. Sorry. Let me do one thing. Let me say new repository and let me say merge repo, something like this. I'm just creating a new repository for just explaining this out. And as and when I create a repository, I have what? The history of the repository, which is telling me that, okay, fine, you have added a readme.md file. Now, if I go ahead right now and edit this file, I'll say this is line 1 on the main branch. And I'll make a comment. Say added line 1 on the main branch. Comment this out. As and when I comment it out, the history is going to track all these changes, telling added line 1 on what? The main branch out here. Let me do one thing. Let me now create a new branch and say this is the develop 1. I'll say develop 1 branch. I'll say create. Now, if I edit this out, I'll say this is line 2 on develop 1 branch with a basic merge. I'll say comment and I'll say added line 1 or added line 2 on develop branch. I'll say comment. Now what I'm doing is on my main branch, I added one line. I added a comment telling that, okay, fine, one line is added. Now let's look at the history of this particular branch. Which branch is this? development branch or develop one branch here. And what all does it have? It has what? Added readme.md file. Where is this history coming from? The,
Main
sorry,
branch.
from the main branch. This is from the main branch because this got into place when I created the main branch. Where is this coming from? Added line 1. Where is this particular comment coming from, or this particular history coming from?
Main branch.
Is it the main branch or is it the develop branch? This one? Develop branch? Are you sure about that?
Main.
What is it telling you? Main branch. Then where is it?
Main.
Main branch. This is also main branch. Where is this commit history coming from? This is
Development.
develop
Development.
branch. Because I'm telling, okay, fine, this is develop branch out here. So there are 3 commit histories on my development one branch out here as such. Now let's go back into my main branch. Now guys, tell me, what do you think will be now the difference of the commit history between the main branch and the develop branch? Will the main branch have all these 3 commits also? Will the
No.
main
No.
branch? Yes, no, no.
No. No.
Okay. So if I go into the main branch, let's look at that. I'll say main. Now I have what? Just these 2 commits. That's it. That are done on the main branch out here as such. Now, in order to make sure that the changes from the develop branch are merged into the main branch, I'll create a what? Pull request. And I'll say added line 2 and I'll say create this out. And I'll say complete. And now I'll complete with basic merge, no fast forward. I won't delete the develop one branch. I'll keep it alive. It's called merge, no fast forward, or you can also call this as a basic merge out here. I'll say complete merge. So now what is happening is that I am now merging the code from the develop one branch into the main branch. Now the point here is that I am not only merging the code, I am also merging the history from the develop branch into the main branch, not in the code, which means that if I go now into the develop branch, look at the history, what is there? Added readme file, added line 1. These 2 commits are coming from the main branch. This commit is on the develop branch. Now if I go back into my main branch, the merge is done, right? Now do you see what is happening? You have these 2 commits that are done on what? Main branch. This commit called what? Added line 2 was done where? On the develop branch. That's what it's telling me. That these 2 commits are on the main branch. Now this is not on the main branch, but this is on the develop branch out here. And finally, there is one pull request. Even the pull request is treated as a commit directly on the main branch out here. So do you see what is happening right now? I have not only the history, sorry, I have not only the code, but also the history being carry forwarded from the develop branch into the main branch, meaning whatever that I did on the develop branch, whatever lines of code that I add on the develop branch, all those commits are also coming into my main branch out here as such. Also, if you go into the commit history, you go here into the commits, this is what it's telling me. And if you want to look at a linear history, this is what you can say. Very first commit or the first 2 commits happened on the main branch. Third commit happened on the develop branch. Fourth is a pull request. So it took all these changes and again it is, let's say, putting it on the main branch out here as such. Now, this might not be a best practice always. Why it might not be a best practice always is the reason being, imagine that in your, let's say, organization, there are multiple developers who are working and there is only one main branch where everyone is committing the code to. Now, if multiple developers are doing multiple commits, at the end of the day, your main branch will have a lot of additional commits out here that you don't need. So for very big projects, right, a merge type called basic merge or no fast forward will not really work. Meaning, if you don't want to carry forward history from your feature branches into the main branch that you have, you should not go for a basic merge. Let me do a squash. Second type of merge is called as a squash merge out here. No fast forward. Sorry, squash merge out here. I'll say develop two. I'll create this out. And let's see. In the develop two branch, I'll add multiple commits. I'll say this is line 3. And I'll say line 3 develop. I'll add one more line here telling that this is line 4. I'll say line 4 develop 2. I can add one more line here telling line 5. Let's say commit again. I'll say line 5 develop 2. So I'm adding multiple commits. I'm adding multiple commits right now. Now if I look at the history, what is happening right now? It's telling readme file. These two are from where? The main branch. This is on what? Develop one branch. All these three are what? Develop two. Now, if I go ahead and do a merge, or if I go ahead and do a pull request with basic merge, imagine all these three commits that I have done on the develop will also get, let's say, carried forward to the main branch out here. What I don't want that to happen. I don't want the commits that are done on my develop branch to go into my main branch out here. So I'll say create a pull request once again, and I'll say uh, test something like this. I'll say create, and I'll say complete with what? Squash commit. I'll say complete merge. Now, what does a squash commit do? Let's understand the difference out here. Let's understand and let's try to understand the difference between a squash and a basic. Now, this is my development 2 branch, wherein all the history is there, and also these are all the commit histories from what? The develop 2 only. Now the pull request has been merged into the main branch. Now if I look into the main branch, do you see the line 5, line 4, line 3? No. Meaning the commits that are made on your subsidiary branches are not directly carried forward into the main branch, but it's summed up together and it is represented by what? A pull request out here. In case you want to understand what are all the small commits that are coming into this particular pull request, you can click on the pull request. You can say details, and here you can say this is the parent branch. It's telling this is line 2 on the development, so on and so forth. And you'll be able to see what are all the commits that are made as a part of this particular pull request out here as such. This is what you can do if you want to, let's say, go ahead and understand what are the, let's say, small commits that are done here as such. Yes, any questions? Any questions between the difference between what is a basic merge versus what is a squash? Again, there are two more types here, telling it is a rebase with commit and so on and so forth. Those two types are not that mandatory. We use mostly a basic or a squash, but you can go ahead and read that particular documentation for the other two types of commits out there as such. So the point here is that I, as a project, let me go into our iOS application. Me, myself as a project, I don't want you to go ahead and do a basic merge. I only want my developers to go ahead and do a squash merge. So I can say limit the merge types. I can remove all these things out here as such. I can say only come with what? A squash merge. Now you are a developer. Sorry, you are a developer right now. You go ahead and want to make a change. You'll say feature branch based out of the develop branch. You have to link a work item, create the, let's say, pull request. And once into the pull request, I'll just go ahead edit some change out here. I'll say demo sample PR, and I'll say go ahead and commit this out. I'll create a pull request into let's say the develop branch out here. I have linked my work items also. I'll say create, and if I now set to autocomplete, I only have the option to do what? The squash commit. Reason being the merge, no fast forward, rebase and fast forward, and also semi-linear merge, they are restricted by the policy. I cannot go ahead and let's say change it out here as such. I can only do a squash commit. Hence, I can also now control. I, as a DevOps engineer, can also now control what is the kind of history that is coming into my develop branch out here. I can now control telling it, okay, fine, there's only a squash commit that needs to come. There is only a fast forward commit that needs to come, and so on and so forth. All these are now achieved by the branching policies out here. And if you look at the branching policy, this is what I do have. I have something called require minimum number of reviewers, one, and requesters cannot approve their own change. So you have to have a project manager or someone who comes and let's say go ahead and approve this change out. Then you have linked work items, comment resolutions, and also the merge types that you can really limit out here as such. Yes, any questions till here? Anyone? Any questions I can take till you? Anyone? Any questions that I can take till you? Anyone? Are we good till here, guys? Any questions that I can answer? Any questions that I can take? Anyone? Any questions, guys? Are we good? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good to that. All right, so let's see. As and when I am a developer, I satisfy all the policies that are set on my branch, which is linked work item, comment resolutions, approvals, merge types. I satisfy all these things, and then I go ahead and let's say merge my changes into the into let's say the develop branch right now. As and when I do that, let's do that. So here there is a test branch, and I already do have a pull request, and I can set this to autocomplete. And I'll delete the test branch after it is merged. I'll set this to autocomplete out here. Now I, as a reviewer, can come into the pull requests. I'll go ahead and I'll say approve this out. As and when I approve this out, what is happening? Pull request is getting merged. And after the pull request gets merged, what will happen, guys? After the pull request will get merged, what's going to happen? What is it really going to happen
Feature.
after the pull request? Sorry, feature branch will get deleted. Yes, feature branch will get
Yeah.
deleted. After that, what is going to happen as an end result of this particular pull request?
Merged. Merged with other.
Yes, that's merged. After that, what is going to happen, sir? After the merge is done, What's going to happen? Do I have anything else? Or are we done with the DevOps process? What is going to happen after the pull request is merged? Feature branch is deleted. Code is merged.
It
After
will
that, what?
be what is merged. It will be in the main branch, and then the release pipeline.
Okay. Then what about the build pipeline?
Sorry, before release, we have the code will be built, and then it will be going to the release pipeline.
Yes. So for the code to build, do I have to, let's say, click on build every time? Or
No,
do we have any
Trigger,
other process
pipeline.
there?
trigger,
We have to go to the pipeline.
Yes. You have to go to the pipeline. And what is that called?
Yeah.
What pipeline are we
Develop
going into right now?
build
Continuous
pipeline.
integration. Yes, build, but we are not calling that as a build right now. It is a continuous integration pipeline. CI, continuous integration process out here as such. That is what actually happened. This pipeline got triggered just now, 36 seconds ago, because I merged a PR. I merged the pull request right now. So which means that let's do this once again. Let's go to the develop. Let's create a new branch out of the develop branch. I'll say this is feature. The test CI. I'll take some work item linked to this. I'll do one more change out here. I'll say demo of CI, continuous integration. Commit this out. I'll say CI test. Again, let's say link my work item. I'll say commit this out. I'll say create a pull request into the develop branch. I'll say create and set to autocomplete. I'll delete the branch after it's merged. I, as a reviewer, or the reviewer, come here, approve this out. And once it's approved, pull request is getting merged. As and when pull request is getting merged, you have what? A pipeline that is getting triggered. Now, do you see the pipeline got triggered for this particular PR called what? CI test. The reason the pipeline got triggered is because I have something called as a continuous integration trigger which is enabled. I have set up something known as continuous integration trigger, and this pipeline has something called as what? Steps within it, which will go ahead and do a restore, build, and publish of my code, and finally something called as what? Publish artifacts out here as such. Now, let's inspect each and every task. Let's go into each and every step or task here and understand what it really does here. So let's go here. Firstly, .NET Restore. It's going into this particular CS project file. It's understanding what are all the dependencies that this project really has. And it is performing a simple operation called .NET Restore out here as such. Second thing, it's doing a .NET build. Again, going inside this particular project. And do you see there is something called arguments, meaning I am passing commands to my build step, telling that please build my code in a configuration called what? Dollar build configuration. What do you mean exactly by this? Is very simple, guys. Is that when you build your code? So yesterday also we built our code, right? So let's go there. When I build my code, I get something called, okay, let's go there. I get something called as a build folder. In my case, this build folder is called, or this build configuration is called, sorry, is called debug. You can build your code in two ways: debug or release. You can do a build of the code in what? Either a debug or either a release. When you build a code in debug, very simple, just understand that you will have additional logging in place. This is for testing purposes. When you build your code in release, it is a clean code. You can simply take this and deploy this out. No additional logging, for production purposes. Now, this is what it is asking you is that yes, you want to build your code. I understand that. But can you tell me what is the configuration here? Is it debug or is it release configuration in which you want to do? And did we give a debug or a release here? Did we mention is it a debug or a release here?
No.
No. What did we mention? We are saying dollar build configuration. This is called a variable in Azure DevOps. Why am I using a variable here? What is the importance of a variable here? Just imagine that you are doing the same build in multiple, let's say, way or multiple steps in your pipeline or multiple places you are, let's say, using this particular configuration value called debug or release. As of now, this is the only task in my pipeline which is using this particular value. But imagine in your case, there are 10 different tasks which are using this particular value out here. And if you want to change this value, you have to go to each and every task and change the value. Instead of that, Azure DevOps gives you an option to go ahead and variabilize this, which means that you can declare this as an Azure DevOps variable and pass the same value in the variable section out here as such. So if you now go into something called variables, I have the value for this variable declared here in the form of a key value pair telling build configuration is equal to what? Release. During the time when Azure DevOps goes ahead and triggers this step off, it'll understand that, okay, fine, you know what? They are asking me to do a build configuration in something called release. So if you go into the pipeline, right, this is what it has. It says agent job and build. And if you look at this, it's just calling a command called .NET.exe and it's doing a build here in a configuration called what? Release. It's not telling it is dollar $build configuration. It's telling the value is what? Release. Which means Azure DevOps resolves the variable or Azure DevOps gets the value of the variable before you go ahead and do a build or a release. It tells, okay, fine, what is the value of this particular variable? And for all the values, it's going to go here into your pipeline and look at this particular section of your pipeline called what? Variables, looks for that particular variable, understand what's its value and gives it to a task. Now imagine you don't want this to be a release, you want this to be debug and multiple steps in your pipeline are using the same value. You don't have to go into each and every individual step and change it. You can just come here and say this is what? Debug. All the steps that are consuming this particular variable will get changed. That is the advantage of something called as variables out here as such. So now if you go back, you have a build and here you have using a variable, then you are doing a publish. Again, even in publish, do you see you have something called as what? Build configuration. If this was not a variable, I would have also come ahead into the publish task, change this value manually. This is something that I'm not doing. Finally, there's something called what? Hyphen hyphen output. Where do you want to store this? And again, there is something called $build dot artifact staging directory. Where can I find this value, guys? Where can I find the value of $build dot artifact staging directory? Where can I find it?
Variables. Variables.
Variables. Let's go to the variables. And what is the variable we are looking for? Do we have that variable here?
No.
Do we have the variable? No. But then how am I getting the value? So if you go to the pipeline, it should have failed, right? The pipeline should have failed if the value is not there. If you go into the publish task, and if you look at this publish task, do you see hyphen hyphen output is actually giving you a value? So it's getting the value from somewhere, right? It's telling it is DA1A something like iOS app. and it's telling this is the folder where I need to publish all the tasks. My question is, where is this getting the value here? Because in my
A
pipeline,
folder.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
A folder.
Right, a folder only, that's correct. But how is it understanding that, sorry, how is it understanding that this particular variable is a folder? Because I did not declare it anywhere, right? I don't really declare this anywhere. But then how is it even getting the value? How is the task even getting this particular value? Because if you see your pipeline, yes, it's an A folder, that's right. It's the artifacts folder. If you go inside this particular pipeline, I did not mention the name of the folder anywhere, but it's still able to get this out. Getting my point or getting my question? I have not declared this anywhere, but I'm still able to get the value. All these variables are called as Azure DevOps predefined variables. I don't have to declare them, they are predefined. How do you know that? Just go into variables. There is something called what? Predefined variables. Just go here. It will take you into something called documentation. And if you look for build.artifact staging directory, it's telling okay, fine, build.artifact staging directory. This is what it's telling. The local path of the agent where the files are stored. For example, C agent 1A. In my case, this variable turned out to be something like D1A1, something like that. Okay, we can go back. In my case, it's coming out to be what? D1A iOS application. It's telling, okay, fine, you want to save it into that particular A folder. So let me look for that A folder on the agent machine and save this here. I don't have to declare such a kind of variables out here at all. There are multiple variables that are there called build ID, build number, build URI, build binary directory, so on and so forth, build sources directory, and etc. 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 There are multiple things that you can be using as a part of your Azure DevOps process. You don't have to declare all these variables. You can simply call these variables out here in your pipelines, and it is still going to work out here as such. So yes, any questions, guys? Anyone, any questions still here? So what we looked into today is on the branch policies, understanding what are all the branch policies, and again came back into our build pipeline, understood what are variables in Azure DevOps, how do you declare a variable in Azure DevOps out here as such. Yes, anyone, any questions here?
One
Anyone?
repository, for one
Good.
repository, we have to build one pipeline.
For one repository, you have to build one pipeline. Generally, yes, but not always true. You can have one simple pipeline which is building from a lot of repositories, from which is, let's say, taking the code from multiple sources. You can add multiple sources as well in one simple build pipeline out here. But if you are using a classic pipeline, then yes, one repository is equal to one pipeline.
First, we have to build the pipeline manually, and we can do automation next.
Yes, yes.
While doing the build pipeline, if you have got any errors, how do we troubleshoot it?
Very importantly, the question there or the answer there becomes, what is the error that we are getting? Where is the error that we are getting? Is the error, let's say, somewhere in doing a build or somewhere in doing a restore? So there can be two errors. One, errors because of a DevOps engineer, or errors because of a developer. If it's a DevOps engineer, then I will have to, let's say, understand what the error really is. What is it really indicating? And then I have to look, let's say, take a look into that particular error. If it's the error because of the developer, then I'll have to come back to the developer, tell that, okay, fine, this is your error. Please go ahead, fix it, and then go ahead and do a build pipeline out here as such. So we'll also discuss about the various errors that you kind of find, that you kind of face out here as and when we go through this particular journey. Is any more questions, guys? Okay, so that's it from my end today. A good day ahead, and we'll meet tomorrow and we'll discuss further on the build and release process out here. Thank you.